Hi, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of Malice in the Mitten. I'm your host, Tracy Preston, along with my bestie, Christine Mulligan. Hey, Christine.
Hey, Trace. What's going on? What are we getting into today?
Well, on today's show, we're going to go back in time. So we're going to be time travelers. What do you think about that, woman?
I feel like I just was a time traveler, going back and forth from the east to the west coast. I'm exhausted. But anyway, what do you mean? Where are we going back in time?
We're going way back. We're going to go into like the early to mid 1800s. So let's get into it. This is Season 6, Episode 4, Chelsey Dew. In May of 1833, Judge Samuel Dexter and his family, along with Indian guides, made their way through present-day Clinton County, Michigan. Densely forested, the journey was slow and exhausting. Food rations were low. The weather was grim, with it being rainy and cold. While traveling, little Riley Dexter, the judge's 2-year-old son, would contract scarlet fever and die. His small body would be left beneath a lone elm tree. The trail Judge Dexter's party followed would eventually be named Dexter Trail and once spanned the state, going from present-day Pontiac to Ionia. The area where little Riley was buried would be named Riley Township in his honor, and in 1841, a town would spring up named North Riley. Within a few years, the little town in the forest would have a post office, store, a sawmill, a school, even a music teacher, and the little town next door, Forest Hill, would boast a cheese factory. And I love cheese. Trees were cleared and it became a bustling, thriving farming community filled with people from all walks of life. Public dances were held on weekends, with members of the community coming to catch up on gossip and share their own news. Today, all that remains is the South Riley Bar, home of the Mackenzie Burger, and some of the best bar food around.
I love how you said we're going to go back in time and you start out with Indian guides and they have a sawmill. I just think that that's so 1800s.
I know.
Oh, God. All right. So, I mean, they started out with the best food in town and they still have the best food in town. Is this what you're trying to tell me?
Yeah, and so this story is written by Rebecca Hiers, right? And she loves the historical stuff, and I love that. Anyway, I'm like, the Mackenzie Burger, what in the hell is that? She sent me a picture of this thing. It's like 10 inches tall. It's nuts. It's one burger is going to feed the whole family. It's like one of the...
give you a heart attack.
Yeah, it's like one of those. It's like one of those really absurd Bloody Marys.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
I'm still gonna go try this damn burger. All right. So, born in South Carolina in 1820 to an African American father and Egyptian American mother, Chelsey Dew was a hard worker. His year of birth varies from 1819 to 1834. His true birth year is probably closer to 1819. He first shows living in Michigan in the 1850 census, working for and living with a man named Thomas Wilson in Watertown Township in Clinton County. Described as a, quote, light-skinned black man and being 5'6", and 140 pounds. Chelsey would have been thin and wiry. He was a hard worker and frugal person, and by 1852 had saved enough money to purchase 80 acres of his own land in Riley Township on the corner of Chadwick and Francis Roads. He would, over the years, expand this to over 200 acres. Boy, wouldn't that be nice? Due to being frugal, he also had enough money to purchase 10 horses, a prize stallion, 50 sheep, 10 hens, 2 roosters, and various other farm animals and implements. The land he had purchased already boasted a house, which he moved into, and he also still owned the house he had moved from, which he had left sitting empty. The abandoned house was across the street from his current home. By the metrics of the time, he was a wealthy and successful farmer. The value of his holdings in 1870 was over $6,000, way more than any of his neighbors' holdings. And in today's money, that $6,000 would be worth $185,650. That's a lot of money.
I love how you always do like comparisons with the money, because I always feel like it's, even though you're saying it's so much, I feel like it's probably even more compared to today.
That should be $3 million.
Exactly.
I like the way you estimate.
BS with that estimation.
We'll just make up our own damn figures.
Exactly. It's like 50 billion right now. Okay.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Okay. He would have been considered a great catch, except that interracial marriage was banned, and African American women were practically non-existent. Of the 307 families living in Riley Township, Chelsey was the only African American. In addition to the lack of available women that he could possibly date and eventually marry, Chelsey Dew was not a likable person. He was considered opinionated, quick-tempered, and too quick to file a lawsuit when people disagreed with him. And his neighbors all had been in a dispute with him at one time or another. He would also tether his animals in his yard with a rope around their neck, and that offended his neighbors, who thought that was abusive. Newspapers of the time would report, quote, "Dew and his neighbors did not dwell together in peace." So, Chelsey was resigned to being single.
You know that there's going to be part of me that wants to just rail against whatever you're going to tell me about this guy. I'm automatically going to think he's innocent and that there was just bigotry involved. Mm-hmm. You know this, right?
I do.
Okay, all right. I'll shut up. Go ahead.
I like to get you riled up. You know this.
I hate it.
I love it.
All right, God.
Okay.
Tell me about all the things this guy probably did never do.
All right, I'm moving on. All right, so then in the summer of 1880, Mary Guy would move to Riley Township. Mary was also African American and, more importantly, single. Although she was in her 30s to Chelsey's 60, the two hit it off. Her brother, Benjamin Guy, using the alias William Cooper, Benjamin, a.k.a. William, would move into the empty house Chelsey owned. A veteran of the Civil War, where he served with the 1st Michigan Colored Infantry Regiment in 1862 and 1864, he had fought in the Civil War. William was 6 foot tall and muscular. He would be an asset to the skinnier, aging Chelsey. As the weeks progressed, love was in the air, and Chelsey and Mary's friendship blossomed into romance. The two married on March 10th, 1881. But the honeymoon didn't last long, and within weeks, the two began to quarrel and fight. In June, Chelsey became violent, choking Mary as he held her down on the floor. William arrived as this was his happening and tried to talk to Chelsey into letting his sister go. When Chelsey refused to stop choking Mary, the larger William picked the smaller man off his sister and threw Chelsey against the wall with his arm across his neck, stopping his breathing. Mary, citing cruelty, filed for divorce at the end of June and moved to Macomb County, near Detroit to live with her mother. In the divorce, she asked for her part of the marital property. Oh, I bet Chelsey wasn't having that. On July 8, 1881, two men, Lonnie Burett and Lyman Tyler, two neighbors of the Dews, made a trip to Lansing to buy supplies. On the trip, the two discussed the recent happenings at the Dew farm. Lyman's wife had had run-ins with Chelsey in the past, and Lyman was still a bit salty about it. The two men also didn't approve of the beating of Mary or how Chelsey treated his animals. In their minds, Chelsey was a bully that needed to see what it felt like to be on the receiving end of abuse for once. In addition to their other supplies, they picked up some tar while they were in town. When they returned to Riley, they gathered up their neighbors and told them of their plan. The neighbors, all feeling pretty much the way that Lonnie and Lyman did, agreed. On July 9th, the two men collected feathers from a cushion and grabbed the tar and some rope. They met at the home of Nathan Jones, another neighbor. The group of 7 men included Nathan Jones, his sons George and Myron, Darius Utter, Lyman Tyler, Monroe Eddy, and Lonnie Burett. Late that night, they descended on Chelsey's home where Darius pounded on the door, pretending Nathan Jones' wife needed a doctor, telling Chelsey he had to go fetch one. Suspecting something was up, Chelsey refused to answer the door. But the men broke the door down and Chelsey attempted to beat them off with a bed slat. However, he was unsuccessful, and the group dragged him into the yard where they tarred and feathered him. Now, for those that don't know, tarring and feathering is a brutal punishment that dates back to at least 1184 in England. First, the intended victim was stripped naked. Once naked, the hands and feet are tied to prevent escape. Then, hot tar, usually from pine, is brushed or poured over the body. Once coated in tar, the victim is usually rolled in or has feathers dropped onto them so they stick to the tar. When used in populated settings, victims were then marched through the town as a form of humiliation. While rarely deadly, the hot tar would burn and blister the body, which, if they did not receive treatment, could become infected and lead to death. Sometimes solvents used to remove the tar would themselves cause infection from peeling of the skin. In the best case scenario, a body would be left marked with the scars from the burns. In short, it was painful. Cooper would arrive at the farm after the other men left and set Chelsey free. As he recovered, the elderly Chelsey refused to sleep in his house any longer, feeling unsafe. He began to sleep in his barn hayloft with an axe as his bedmate. On July 13th, Mary wrote to her brother asking him to gather her things from Chelsey's home. William agreed, fetched her belongings, and sent them to his sister in Detroit. Later that month, Mary would approach her cousin Isaac Drenshaw about killing Chelsey. Isaac would refuse, even though she promised him $400 and a pair of horses. On August 17, 1881, Mary would travel to Muir, Michigan in Ionia County. There she would purchase a revolver. She later met with William in the city of Fowler in Clinton County, delivering to him the gun and $385. William had told her he no longer felt safe living so close to Chelsey, and he felt he needed it for protection. He said he feared for his life. Whether he feared Chelsey or the neighbors, he didn't say. Mary would later state she was just helping her brother out, while others would say she was supplying tools for and paying for murder. Tuesday, August 23rd, 1881, dawned warm and clear. William's daughter observed Chelsey outside tending to his animals and doing other farm chores. It appeared to be a normal, rural farm life day. But the night would come alive with persons unknown and malice of a murderous type. At about 10 p.m. that night, neighbor Edson Smith would report his dog barking as if people were crossing his yard. Neighbor Mary Smith would say she saw people walking toward Dew's Woods, a plot of land about a half-mile west of where William lived. There was a path leading to a spring on this land that Chelsey owned, where he would water his farm animals in the summer months. A Dr. Bates and his daughter were returning to nearby DeWitt when they saw a wagon headed away from them with 9 men in it. Living across the street from Chelsey's home, William's wife reported hearing someone say, "Murder!" in the middle of the night. Figuring the neighbors were just tar and feathering Chelsey again, she went back to bed. What? Oh my God.
I don't understand. So somebody just randomly screams out murder?
Yeah, and she's like, you know what? Chelsea's getting tarred and feather again. I'm going back to bed.
No biggie. Okay.
What the living hell? Oh my God. Okay. Farm life starts early, and at 5:30 a.m. on August 24th, William awoke to start the fire in a stove. As he started his morning routine, he looked across the street to Chelsea's home and noticed the barn doors were open, but Chelsey was not in sight. This struck him as odd, so he went across the road with his wife to investigate. As they entered the barn, they saw the body of Chelsey Dew hanging by his neck from the rafters. Hands tied behind him, his feet missing one shoe. He was about 6 inches off the ground. He also appeared to have been shot with serious wounds to his head. His wife fainted at the sight. William took his wife back home and put her to bed. While his children took care of his wife, William went to the neighbors with the news of his grisly discovery in the barn. Nathaniel Daniels, the county coroner, would arrive about 9 a.m., but then at least 20 people had been in and around the barnyard. He discovered the house was locked tight with no sign of entry. There were no broken windows, no sign of a struggle either in the barn or in the yard. Chelsea's hat and missing shoe were found near the gate, along with some blood. Cuts on the hat matched cuts on Chelsea's head. The blood on the body was dry, and there was no blood to be found on the barn floor, leading him to believe Chelsey had been murdered elsewhere, perhaps near the spring. He hypothesized that Chelsey had been killed elsewhere and his dead body hung, or that he had been knocked unconscious and then hung, killing him. While her husband helped investigators at the scene, his wife traveled to Macomb County to inform Mary her husband had been murdered. When she was told, Mary reportedly replied, "Who is killed? Ben or Dew?" It was a strange thing to say, and she would come to regret those words. A coroner's inquest was held in the small nearby town of Waukusta. A jury of 12 men would examine the evidence. Strangely, William would bring the revolver his sister had given him to Nathan Jones' house for safekeeping. Nathan would in turn burn some spare rope he had in William's stove. He would claim it was leftover rope from where he and others tarred and feathered Chelsey. The sheriff would search William's home for a blood-stained shirt. No such shirt was found. Autopsy would find that Chelsey had been beaten by either a wooden club or a blunt end of an axe, perhaps the axe he slept with. He had a fractured skull and a broken neck, along with other injuries on his back and legs. He had been beaten. On Thursday, August 25th, William's wife would return to Riley with Mary. The funeral, held at 2 p.m. that day, would see Chelsey laid to rest at South Riley Cemetery. At the funeral, both William and Nathan were said to have been wearing white shirts with mysterious dark stains on them that had unsuccessfully been tried to have been removed. Nathan claimed the stains on his shirt were from a nosebleed, or maybe from killing a chicken, or the time he had 2 teeth pulled. William remained silent about his shirt. Later that night, Nathan and Lonnie Burritt would pay a visit to William. During the visit, he was told to tell investigators that all he knew about the tarring and feathering incident was that it was done by a group of men riding horses and wearing masks. Shortly after, a fire would break out on the path leading to the spring, the same path it was believed Chelsey was murdered on. William would be accused of starting this fire. As the inquest continued, William would testify to the men in masks tarring and feathering Chelsey. Later, Lonnie Burritt would break under questioning and admit it was him and a group of neighbors. At the conclusion of the inquest, it was determined that Benjamin Guy, aka William Cooper, with the assistance of unknown persons, had broken Chelsey Dew's neck, then hung his body in the barn. He was arrested along with his wife and sister and sent to the jail in St. John's to await trial. That's just like 10 miles from me.
Okay, so wait a minute. So all of the white neighbors tarred and feathered him, and most likely probably killed him. But the brother-in-law, Ben, his wife, and the ex-wife of him end up getting convicted? Is this what you're telling me?
Well, yeah, because, they're not white.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So the thing is a black man gets killed. They think that the black wife paid for the killing for her brother. And then her brother did it, so they get rid of all the black people in town in one fell swoop. And then, oh yeah, by the way, probably recoup 200 acres.
Yeah. They're like, you know what, bros? We're going to divide that up.
Oh my God.
We're going to take it.
I can't even. None of this story is probably real. Just saying. And those guys in masks? Sounds familiar.
Right.
Were they also wearing white?
Were they white masks, you sons of bitches?
What, were they white masks and pointy?
By any chance.
Just ask him.
Yeah. Ask him for a friend.
Okay.
I know.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Now, the trial, lasting 11 days, started in April of 1882. The prosecution would present evidence via testimony of witnesses that William had threatened to kill Chelsey multiple times. Evidence was presented of Mary trying to convince her cousin to murder him, and when that failed, she hired her brother. It was presented that Mary and her brother contrived for her to marry Chelsey to gain access to his money. After his death, Mary received over 200 acres of land valued at $4,000 to be divided with her brother in Canada. However, William was well liked in the community. His character was praised by friends, neighbors, and all that knew him. Mary's cousin's testimony was dismissed as he had a criminal record. It was also shown that many key suspects had changed their stories. It was pointed out that Nathan Jones, Ralph Johnson, and Lonnie Burritt had ample reason to want Chelsey dead. Chelsey had gone to St. John's the day before he was murdered. Could the men have believed Chelsey went there to press charges against them for the tarring and feathering? If he was dead, they wouldn't have to undergo a criminal or civil trial. The jury would deliberate for only 2 hours, and we know that's never good. At that time, they deemed the prosecution had not proven their case beyond a reasonable doubt, and all 3 defendants, William, his wife, and his sister, were set free. To this day, over 144 years later, the case is officially unsolved. Over the years, rumor has it that it was a racially motivated killing, but no definitive proof of this has ever been given. A reward was offered for information leading to the apprehension of the killer or killers, but it was never claimed. Mary would sell the land she received, remarry, and die in Ionia, Michigan in 1900. William would move to Lansing in the 1890s. After his death, he was buried in the Soldiers' Lot at Mount Hope Cemetery in Lansing. Do you believe it was a racially motivated murder? Or did William and his sister get away with murder? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you like the stories of Michigan's past, please hit that like and share button. And if you are ever in the area, stop at South Riley Bar for that Mackenzie burger or some gizzards. You won't regret it.
Okay. Food aside, I know you love the food part and you want people to go check out this big old burger. But listen here. This was definitely a racially motivated murder. And I'm actually really surprised that the wife and the brother-in-law, right?
Mm-hmm.
This guy's technically the brother-in-law. I'm surprised that they got set free and they weren't hung in town square.
I know, because that's the way it rolls, right?
Exactly. I'm super surprised.
Mm-hmm.
I really thought they were going to be the scapegoats.
Yeah, I'm super happy that they did not get hung and charged with all of this, because you know damn well it was the neighbors.
Yeah, in the masks that were, by the way, white and pointy.
With their long white robes.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, my goodness. All right, well, at least they got off free. So I guess I'll take your fable for what it is.
Right. Right. Yeah, so great job, Rebecca. As always, thank you so much. She dives into these really historical crimes, and people are loving it. People loving the old ones. And I think the reason why is that A, she just does a really great job with her research, and B, these are stories that nobody knows for the masses.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's pretty cool to like dive back into, when there were Indian guides and all that jazz. But at the same time, like, there's always going to be a part of me that whenever I hear anything historical, I'm like, but how do we know? But who says? But whose perspective? Where's the reality in this? Because whose perspective is telling this? Are we telling this from the viewpoint of a racist society? Like, I don't know how much of it I believe. I don't know. I feel that way about all historic stories, is I immediately have doubt, because I immediately think that the story is skewed from the perspective of
the white man,
mindless people.
Listen, this is how we want you to know this story. Don't look over there. Look over here.
Exactly.
Yeah. So thanks, Rebecca. Great story. I love it. And thank you, everyone, for listening. And please keep listening. And if you can, listen on YouTube. Like, subscribe, share. Our numbers are creeping up. I'm getting comments. I love it. I am watching, and I will absolutely respond to you. So thank you so much, everyone. We really appreciate you listening. So have a great week, and we will see you back on Wednesday for Round Robin. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.